Hi everybody and welcome to the Creative Corner, an opportunity for you to get inside the head and the heart of an author, understand who they are and why they brought their book to life. And joining me as usual, The Flash. How you doing, bro?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You managed to get the intro out in one go this time.
I did.
Congratulations.
Yep, I'm always about accomplishing great feats, mate.
Absolutely, especially on a half sunny, half rainy Saturday morning. You've got to do what you can.
Exactly. You been good?
I have been good, thank you. What about you?
Yeah, man, busy. It's good. I like that. And I liked sitting down with authors and chatting to authors. And today we've got another one. We've got the author of A Season of Clouds, Alex Gerrick, joining us. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thanks, Ocean, and great to be here.
Awesome. Well, we know about you, but these guys don't. So how about you tell us a bit about Alex?
Sure. Look, I'm a first generation Australian. My parents came from the former Yugoslavia after the Second World War. Dad had to leave because he was an anti-communist and he fought against the communists, the Germans, during the Second World War. So Australia was his last refuge, I guess, to go to. So I'm the youngest of 4 children. I was born in Australia. 2 of my oldest 2 siblings were born overseas, but I was born in Australia. Probably a mistake. My mum had me pretty late in life, and there's a large distance between me and my other siblings. But that was good in many ways. So I basically born in Sydney, spent a little bit of time in New South Wales country. Had a lot of things happen to me when I was a young boy, which comes out in the book. For example, I got shot when I was 5 years old. Which was, as I said, it's an integral part of the book, so I won't spoil it for you. But a lot of things happened to me as a youngster, but we ended up in Queensland. Grew up, went to school in Gladstone in central Queensland, came down here to Brisbane, spent a lot of my early 20s in Brisbane. Basically, I've done a couple of master's degrees, mainly in strategic studies and history and areas like that. Most of my career was with the public sector or in politics. I spent a lot of my time with the Department of Defence. Also spent 3 years as an advisor and chief of staff working in the Rudd-Gillard governments, which again would be another book, but I'm not going to. I won't bore you with all the details on that. But mainly was, as I said, ended up my career in the Department of Veterans Affairs as a senior bureaucrat, and left there in 2018. And since then, I've been the CEO of a not-for-profit organisation called Fearless, which deals with PTSD and advocating for better services for PTSD sufferers. And also I'm involved with Animal Therapies Limited, which is about using animals to help people with mental illness and so forth. So that's my background.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hear the animal thing actually is just one of the best discoveries ever.
Look, I mean, all of us have had dogs and cats and so forth, and we know how therapeutic animals can be. And we're seeing that more and more now. It's being used professionally to help people with mental health issues. And but it doesn't have to be dogs and cats. It can be a whole range of
horses.
things. Horses.
I was actually in the
Equine
US.
therapy is one of the big growth areas in terms of that. But we also, without digressing, we had a wonderful young girl who's involved with us, and her animal is chickens. So she's autistic and did a lot of work, self-help around herself with her chickens. So, so you never thought chickens could be therapeutic, but there you go.
Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it as you're saying that, excuse me, I actually could. I can see how it doesn't matter. We gravitate to dogs and cats and birds sometimes. All right, you had a bird. Still have a bird. Darren has a bird, everyone. Yeah. But no, I can definitely see how other animals can create that kind of peace for people. Yeah,
that's right. And so, and look, what we're basically the industry employer group. Industry advisory group, I guess, on that. And so, a couple of local people, Wendy Coombe and Brian have done a lot of great work in setting this up, so it's been really great being involved with them as well.
Oh, you do good things, Alex. I love it.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that about the dog thing. Not dogs, specifically, but the animals. That's fantastic.
No, it's a great. As I said, I'm a great animal lover, and it's just great to be able to include those two together. So,
do you have any animals yourself?
Yeah, I've got a beautiful beagle called Louis. He's only 8 months old. But my previous dog, George, he was also a beagle. He was with me as I wrote this book, and unfortunately died just a couple of months before
you
we got
got
it
to see it
published. Yeah. And it was really sad because I know it sounds stupid,
No.
but I would have loved to have had him when I had the book, you know.
You're talking to two very passionate dog owners here, and we'll take this opportunity because I know that he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you've got a new addition to the family there, Flash.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking earlier, I have two mini schnauzers. One's brand new, and the other one, he's about 5. He comes into the office probably about 4 days a week, and we jokingly call him the director of stress management, but he so is, you know, like he'll disappear and I have no idea where he is, and he's on somebody's lap, one of the team's lap, while they're typing away by the computer, and he's just cuddling them. So,
well,
you know, totally.
both of you are connected with me on Facebook, so if you go onto some of my recent Facebook posts, there's a couple there about my dog
standing on the table.
On the table, yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
I had a chuckle.
It's a bit weird, but anyway,
chuckle about that. So you seem like a very well-travelled
very well,
man, and particularly in your career as well. You seem to you've sort of have a very interesting career, and life as well, I guess. From all of that, tell us, like, how did that boil down into the book?
Yeah, well, the travel bit is very important. I should have sort of added that before that. That's my my great hobby, I guess, is travel and history and so forth. But where the book came from was that I was at the peak of my career, basically in the beginning of 2016. There was an issue at work and as a result of that, I went into a heavy depression, and I almost committed suicide. And if it wasn't for the intervention of one of my staff members, I would have done it. And that's detailed in the book, of course. I got through all that and everything got sorted out, and I left the public service 2 years later. But in between that, I did a bit of therapy, and I realised that even though that was a pivotal point, it'd been leading up to this point for decades, ever since I was a kid. So the reason I wrote the book, and I said this at both of my launches, was that I really needed, when I left the public service, I really needed to understand how I got there, and writing a book was the best way of doing it. And as I said in one of my launches, I needed to find. I'd been playing so many different characters throughout my career, and I had a pretty successful career, that I'd forgotten who I was. And I know this sounds trite, but I actually I needed to discover who I really was, and writing the book allowed me to do that. And in particular, you can write a book in so many different ways, and a lot of people ask me, why did you write it as a fictional memoir? Because the book is, is based on my life, but it's about an 80-20 split, I guess, in terms of 80% true and 20% fiction. But I've just found that the better way of understanding myself was by making myself as a character, and then writing about myself as a character, rather than doing that, that sort of that non-fiction blurb. And the other part there too, the interesting part about my book is not so much me, but the people that were involved in my life, particularly in my younger years, that helped me understand about myself. And it was their wisdom that when I really hit the road badly in 2016, it was me being able to go back and remember what these people had done and said to me that helped me get through that period. So that's what the book's basically about. And I just realised I could kill two birds with one stone, protect people's privacy, but at the same time, I was able to, I'm very honest about things about myself there. And I reckon the only reason I was able to do that was because I looked at myself as a fictional character. And how would I go about writing Alex Gerrick as a character if I was going to write him in a book? And that's what I did.
See, there's a catharticism that comes with writing, and even when if you're not going down there writing your own story, even if there is a 20% fiction element to it, there is a part of yourself that you discover through writing.
Oh, definitely.
And I've always been fascinated with that part of the journey in this industry, is to see that cathartic impact happen with somebody. And we use this when I'm speaking prior to COVID. I'd always talk about creative expression beats depression. And I knew that when, and it didn't have to be in writing, but in art, dance, music, whatever it was, there was a way of expressing yourself that would actually always bring you joy. And, you know, you've just highlighted that with the way that you've described, you know, where the book came from. When you're thinking about the target market for the book, who it's aimed for, where's the direction? Look,
I reckon there's multiple directions, and the people have read the book, and I've been really pleasantly surprised by the positive feedback I've got from the book, have read it. And I think different people have got different things from it. Ostensibly, when I wrote it for people like me, middle-aged professional people who spent most of their life not understanding that they may have had a problem and not done anything about it. And I wanted it to be a book for them to say, look, you know, just because you're a successful person doesn't mean to say that you may not have been suffering from a mental illness or PTSD, and you need to do something positive about it. So that's been my main focus. And I've been, and as I've said recently, I had a friend of mine whose husband suffers from PTSD, didn't want to go to a doctor, you know, has had this problem for years and years, read my book, and then went to a doctor. And if I've helped one person, that I've reached my KPI. That was my KPI, to help at least one person. So the bit of the targets to that market. But then, as I've discovered, there's other things too. I mean, the book's not only about PTSD, it's also about things like sexual assault and stuff like that. And then I just realised that there are other people who have benefited from that reading it, and including some of the women close to me who've had their own issues, and they've got a lot out of it as well. So the target market is, I'd say, is pretty broad. It's around that mental health, but it's also, there's a little bit in there for everyone.
When you've spent a lot of your career and you've gone and you know, you've been in the service industry primarily, but this is, by the sounds of it, one of the very first times where you've put yourself as Alex out there. How the hell does that feel when you hear those people say that to you?
Well, look, it's been a bit weird, I've got to be honest, Ocean. I mean, because and a great example, at my book launch in Canberra, I had a lot of my former staff there, and we had a very close relationship, my staff and I. And when I left, I don't think, it was a bit of surprise to everyone, and I think that they never really understood why I left. And so the book was a great way, in many, and I said this on the night, the book was a great way, in many ways was written for them. And it's been interesting to see some of my former staff members come back to me after reading the book, and it's been cathartic for them as well. Like, and it's like, you know, all of my old friends knew who the old Alex Gerrick was, but the people who work for me perhaps didn't. And I was a bit of a lad when I was younger, and I got up to lots of mischief, as you'll read in the book. And I think that was really strange, I think, for a lot of my staff and a lot of my close friends that I've developed recently, because they started to unravel in their own mind who I really was. And I found that really interesting. It's also challenging as well, as you just said, opening yourself up to people. I found that, you know, that was always going to be the biggest thing, and I think but I just decided that if I was going to help people, if I was going to say to you, Ocean, you've got, you know, PTSD, you need to be honest about yourself, then I have to be honest with myself to enable to help you.
There is so much strength and vulnerability though, isn't there?
That's right, there is. And so that was my number one priority. You have to be honest, totally honest with yourself, all the good things, all the bad things, all the indifferent things, because then that might encourage someone else to be honest about themselves as well.
I love that.
And so that was the real reason. And look, I have put myself out there, and you know, and look, and I don't necessarily want people to know about some things, but I felt, look, you've got to be honest and open and upfront about it, and that's what I've been.
We said off camera before we started, we've got one trip around the sun. Got to make it count.
Yeah, you do. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's been but it's been interesting just to see the reaction of people.
What sort of feedback have you had?
Oh, look, it's been very I think everybody said it's a rollicking read, so they've been able to get through it, even though it's a large book.
It's a monster.
It's a monster. They've got through it very quickly because it's because the pace keeps on going.
Yep.
But I think mainly the feedback has been, number one, we didn't realise what you went through. And number two, there's revelations about myself that people wouldn't have known, so that's been a big one. But I think people in general just thought, it's a great story, and we've taken something out of it from our own lives, for our own lives.
Awesome.
So that's the thing that I really wanted to do. Interesting. I had a friend of mine who was writing a review for the Canberra Times for it, and she's finished it. But she said, I can't write. She's finished the book, but she said, I can't write the review yet because it's impacted on me so much. I have to sit and think about what it means to me first before I write the review.
Holy crap!
So that's where we sort of got to.
Well, that's powerful.
What do we want this to achieve? Obviously you've talked about the PTSD element, and specifically with the target market.
Yeah.
But what's the mission here, Alex?
The mission here, I guess. I never set out to write. Harry Potter, and I don't want to. What I set out to do was really to do a couple of things, encourage people to tell their own story. I mean, and it was great because I had people like Roxanne McCarty-O'Kane came to my book launch in Canberra, and a lot of people on that night started to go to her and say, well, I've got a story as well.
Nice.
And that's what I want to do. I want to encourage people to tell their own story. Because, it's just me, I'm just ordinary Alex Gerrick who's written a book. I mean, that could be anyone. And I think you guys are working, why I love you guys so much is because you're encouraging that in your own way. You're getting people to tell their story. Whereas, in a traditional market, that's maybe more difficult to do. So look, the ultimate aim is really to get my story out there, help people where I can. I see it supporting some of the work that I do with Fearless and also with animal therapies as well. So, and I'll continue to do that for a few more years and just hopefully entertain people if I can.
It certainly is, working in publishing is a very humbling experience because we find ourselves working with people who do have stories to tell.
Yeah.
But it's also fantastic because it's such a cathartic process. As you've found and you've said today on this interview, like how cathartic it was for you to sort of put that fictional character there and explore fictional Alex Gerrick.
Yeah.
I guess my question for you is, how did you find the writing process? Like how was that putting fictional Alex Gerrick there on page and then expanding and opening it?
Yeah, it was, look, it was strange at first and when I first decided to write it, I was going to write it as a self-help book, and a non-fiction. But then I thought to myself, who cares what some former public servant in Canberra says? I mean, there's hundreds of people out there with PTSD stories and how to recover. What I wanted to do was really write something that focused on the other people that are involved when you suffer from something like this, and also, how big that makes the rest of your life and how that all interconnects with the rest of your life. And the only way that I could really do it was write it in the way that I did. But I found the writing process really interesting because everybody told me that you've got to be very disciplined when you write. You set the same time every day, write 500 words or whatever every day, be really disciplined. Yeah, that's what you got to do, But I found the exact opposite. I worked better. Like I would go and watch a Seinfeld episode and something in Seinfeld would click in my head and I'd go, geez, that's a great idea. Then I'd go into and write the thing, So I was very much undisciplined and I wrote when I really felt like writing. And you asked the question about me personally. Well, what I did, I just found that once I started to be honest about, and in the opening chapter or the second chapter, it's a bit of it's a bit of in the prologue. I write a lot about what happened to me as a kid, and when I wrote that, everything became really easy after that, mate, for some reason. And I don't know why. That was the really important chapter, because I wrote all this stuff about, being visited by this scary clown when I was a kid, and all these things that happened to me along my life. I got held at gunpoint during a coup in the Philippines. I watched a little girl die from malaria. I had all these things happen to me as a kid as well. And then once I was able to get that chapter out, and I said, well, you've written about yourself here, you can write the rest of the story now. And that was the catalyst, I guess.
Wow, to actually say that like Seinfeld and Kramer were an inspiration to writing this book. That's something I've never heard before.
I've never heard that before, that's for sure.
I know more George Costanza.
Really?
George is my ultimate hero. Yeah.
So the book's written, you go into the publishing process, obviously connecting with all of us, and then we go through this journey, a brand new journey for you. How'd you find that?
Oh, look, I learnt a lot. Incredible. And I think there was a couple of things there. I mean, even though I'm a pretty sort of strategic person, sometimes I get too focused on the detail. And I think if I had my time over again, I wouldn't be that way. And it was more, and poor Sarah. Sarah was fantastic to work with, but I must have driven Sarah crazy at times. No, this is wrong, blah blah blah. And she was really, really good at though. I mean, what was so brilliant about Sarah is that she took me on the journey, and every time I started to veer off, Sarah would politely put me back on the road again, and I found that having that strong editor, working with you, or that strong manager of that process, I found really, really important. So I learned a lot about editing. I learned about writing and about editing, and I think the critical thing is that you need to focus as a writer, and that the other people who are doing that side of it focus on their job, and if you could let Sarah know that that's what I learned, I think she would be very pleased about that.
I think she'll be very pleased.
Yeah, because that's what I learned. Because I just think sometimes I got caught too much in the minor detail.
You've had a really colourful career. You've gone from the journey of writing through catharticism, now a published author. You touched on it briefly just before, so I guess I'm just now asking you to expand a bit more on what's next.
What next? Yeah. Good question. I've always intended this to be a trilogy, and the next book, and when you read the book, it opens it up for that, and so there's going to be. The next book I was going to write was one of the principal characters in the book was this woman I met in the former Yugoslavia. I met from the former Yugoslavia when I was in Athens. I called her Martina in the book, and one of the pivotal plots in the book is how I let her down. And I wanted to find her again, so I actually did that in real life. I spent a bit of time over the last few years going to Europe trying to find her, and without much success. So I wanted to write a book around that, and that was going to be the next book. But I've decided now, because my eldest sister is 81, she's an amazing woman, but she's got her own story to tell about things that happened before I was born, which is far more interesting than me. And so the next book is going to be about that. It's going to be about my family, how they came from the former Yugoslavia to Australia, with a focus on my sister. But in that book, and I've said before that when I was young, I was shot when I was 5 years old, and we always never found out why and who did it. So my co-author Belinda Neal, who's one of New South Wales' top investigators, she's going to do her own investigation, cold case investigation into it. So the book is going to be split between that and the story about my family, and we're going to somehow bring it together.
Is that exciting for you?
Oh yeah. I'm excited to write with Belinda because, as I said, she's a best-selling author with her book Under Siege. And she works with me also on the Fearless board, and she's just a tremendous person, and I'm just really looking forward to working with her. But most importantly, I'm looking forward to getting my sister's story out, because it is an amazing story. And it's something that she wanted to do for years and years, but for different reasons hasn't been able to do so. And we start as of Monday, Belinda and I and my sister getting together, and we're having our first meeting. So yeah, that's what's next.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but look, as I said, I'm hoping to do the trilogy, and then I'll retire into on the beach and let somebody else write their memoirs.
Well, we're really looking forward to actually seeing them come to life, and I think that, like Flash said, that's so exciting. I think it's going to be great to be watching that transform for you.
Fantastic.
One of the things that we try and do through these interviews is give the viewer an understanding of who you guys are as authors and why you do these, because there's often a bit of a disconnect between the artist and the art, and we really wanted to kind of bridge that gap with these interviews. And I think today you've given us and the viewers a really good insight into A Season of Clouds and why this came to life and what you've learned by doing that experience. But now I want to ask you something else. What's your spirit animal, mate?
My spirit animal would have to be some form of migratory bird, because albatross, whatever it is, because that's me. Free spirit, going where, not restricted to where he's going, having the world, to explore. That's
always on the move.
Always on the move, and as you could probably work out during COVID, I wasn't a happy person being locked in and being restricted because I have to be on the move all the time. So that's. I think, I've thought long and hard about it, but it has to be a bird, I'd say. Yeah.
That's a first.
Yeah.
That is a first.
Is it?
And it's, I say this all the time. It's just so interesting asking these questions because what comes out from the author about themselves is always so interesting. And I have to say I totally see it.
Yeah.
I totally, what I know of you and the book, I totally see the connection there. So the next funny question we have for you is we wear these superhero shirts.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And the team all have superhero denominations. So what would be if you were to name a superhero that you connected with, who would it be?
Look, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's neither of your selections, but I'd have to say Batman.
Batman.
And the reason being is that I'm a bit of a Cape Crusader, but I'm also there's a lot, until this book, I guess, there was a lot of me behind the mask that people didn't see.
Very powerful.
That people didn't see. And I guess Batman, through this book, Batman got unmasked, I guess.
Wow.
Well done.
Yep.
Did you get that one-liner there, Darren?
Yeah. Nailed the answer.
Yeah.
Look, Alex, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and giving us an insight into this book, into you and the Batman. Well, he's a bit of a traveller himself.
Yeah, he is. Could I just also say thank you to Ocean Reef Publishing and everyone involved. They've been amazing, particularly as we were counting down to the days of my first launch, and the amount of effort that went into it was just fantastic. So you brought my book to life, and I'll forever be grateful to you guys for doing that. So thank you.
You're welcome, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now you guys need to go and check out what this book's all about. And all you have to do is follow the link on the bottom of the screen there. Go and check it out. Subscribe on Alex's website so you can get updated to when the second book comes out. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time on The Creative Corner.